According to the United Nations, the Central American country of Honduras is one of the most dangerous countries in the world for women. The number of U.S. asylum seekers from Honduras and neighboring El Salvador and Guatemala has increased by 500% since 2008. For many of the women making the journey to the southern border, it is not about escaping poverty. It is a matter of life and death. Gracie Murphree is the founder of Heart of Christ Ministries in Honduras that works with national and international authorities to aid victims of violence. Gracie is American and has been living in Honduras since 2005. She created the first ever Special Victims Unit for Honduras and is the author of a new book titled Journey to Justice, Finding God and Destiny in Darkness. Gracie joins me today to discuss her very important work. Gracie, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And you are in Honduras at the moment, right? Where in Honduras are you?
We are about 30 miles north of the capital city of Tegucigalpa, on the road to Olancho.
What led you to Honduras?
Well, we had come in 2004 for a 10-day missionary trip. I was a journalist prior to coming. And when we left, we were feeling like we were leaving home, not going home. And when my husband and I returned with the group, after a couple days, we sat down to talk and found out that both of us were feeling the same way. And we prayed about it and felt that we needed to sell everything and leave everything behind and move here. And a year later, we were here. We landed on June 28, 2005.
Wow. What should we know about women living in Honduras and the violence that's happening there?
Honduras is a country that has a machismo attitude in which the woman and the children are property of the man, like the pigs and the dogs in the yard. And there's this belief that the man can do anything that they want with the woman. The violence against women is tremendous. When we began, there were about 185 femicides, that's murders of women in Honduras, per year. Since we've been here, more than 5,000 women have been murdered, and they don't have any justice. 94 to 96% of all cases of special crimes go unpunished in Honduras, according to the United Nations.
So you started an organization in Honduras there. It's called Hearts of Christ. Tell me what that organization is about and tell me what you do there.
We work with vulnerable groups, women, children, elderly, disabled, LGBT groups, indigenous groups that suffer violence in the country. We work with the authorities, with the police, the investigators, the prosecutors, the judges, to help the client through the legal process of their case. We also have a home for girls pregnant by rape and incest, and we have an emergency crisis refuge. We have the crisis office, and we're building a justice center. So basically, we work with the woman or the child or the person who is a member of a vulnerable group at the moment that they put in their report to the police, or they come to us and we go with them to the police, help them through the entire process, give them shelter, provide needs that they may have at the time. And we also train the authorities to know what the laws and the procedures are and how to treat victims of violence.
How is your relationship with the authorities there in Honduras?
Well, it's hard to describe the government or the authorities in one group. We have some who do want to help us and work side by side with us, and then we have others who sabotage us and try to cause us harm. So the ministry actually exists because the police came to us in 2005 and asked me to create this program for victims of violence. They told me that I was now chief of special crimes of the first special crimes office in the country, and that there were police under my command. They didn't ask. It was, I guess, decided by them. And we did the work. We had tremendous success because in Honduras, more than 70% of women and children suffer some form of violence. And overall, because of a culture not to report, and because of a culture of revenge, and because of the negligence and corruption, people don't report crimes. So only about 30% or less of special crimes are reported. Less than 12% make it to the court. Less than 1%, or as the United Nations says, 4 to 6% receive justice in their cases. And we had such success that we had increased the number of reports to over 90%, with a 71% conviction rate. And that was great, but during the process, there would be family members or friends of the perpetrator who would be angry that we were working to empower this justice, and they would actually try to kill me. Basically, when we got to 71% conviction rate, the 29% of cases that we can't get done in the court, we know who the criminal is but can't find him, or we don't know who he is, or it's negligence and corruption. And when I started filing corruption and negligence reports, then the order to assassinate me by the government came out.
Do you have protection right now?
My walls, my cameras, my security guard, my dogs.
You have a security.
Lord.
You have a security guard.
Yes, we have security guards.
What would happen to the perpetrator in 2005 before you arrived? Was there any
Nothing.
justice? There was no justice.
No, if they went to the police, a lot of times the police would re-victimize the woman and send her away, that it was her fault. They wouldn't know what to do, and so they'd mishandle the case. If they did take the report, many times, most of the time, the report was never submitted to the judge. A protection order was never put into place. The procedures of the law were not followed properly.
So there was a reluctance to report a crime because nothing would happen. So now, when you came, how did you get teeth into the prosecution of a crime? What did you do that somebody was actually getting arrested?
I was actually in the office in the police station. They'd given me an office in the police station with police officers. So when the victims or clients would arrive, we would walk with them through the process and make sure that the police did their job, make sure that the investigators did their job. We would harass them and say, when are you going out to the crime scene? When are we getting the arrest warrant? When are you giving the case to the prosecutor? We go to the prosecutor. When are you sending it into the judge for the arrest warrant? The arrest warrant would come in. I'd go to the colonel. When we had a good colonel, when we had bad colonels, we had no help. When we had a good colonel, I'd say, hey, we got the arrest warrant for this. Can we get a team? I actually was active in every single case.
So in 2005, there were laws. Nobody was doing anything with those laws.
Yeah, it's the same now.
It's the same laws as in 2005. It's just now maybe there's a little more enforcement because you're literally standing on top of people.
Well, you see, they made me chief of special crimes for 3 states. In the 3 states that we were working in, and then the one other office that we worked with, the woman who worked nationally, we were making progress. It was a struggle. Every case was a fight. We handled over 6,000 cases between 2006 and 2011. Outside of that area, it was still the same as it was before. And then in 2011, we had to close our offices because of the order to assassinate me. And everything went back nationally to the way it was before. We now have reopened the office in September of 2018, and we're starting to get back into the swing of doing the cases. But it's only in the area that we're in. Right now, we have an 85% conviction rate.
How do you educate people who were victims of violence to come forward?
Well, first of all, we have a radio show to over 500,000 listeners in our area to teach them about violence and what to do and let them know that we're here. We also go into the communities and teach the leaders, and we go into the schools with the kids and the parents. And then we walk with them side by side through the process. So when they go to the police to put in their report, we're with them when they're doing that. When they go to forensics to have their forensic evaluation, we're holding their hand. When they go to court, we're with them. And we maintain communication with them. Sometimes they're brought into our shelter, so we're taking care of them 24 hours a day.
Now, there was a horrific murder of Miss Honduras in 2014. Tell me about her murder. What happened?
She was at a party with her sister. It was a birthday party. I don't remember who it was for. And her sister's boyfriend did not like how she was dancing with another man or talking to another man. So he shot her dead. And when Miss Honduras went to run, he shot her dead. They did not find their bodies for a while. And I don't want to graphically say what was done with them because this is television, but they don't just kill people here. They have really barbaric ways of doing things with the bodies.
So what is this mentality of people who are doing this about abusing, beating women? Where's this mentality coming from?
It's a history of machismo. It began with the Spanish conquistadors and the power and the control over the people, and just the belief that the man is the one who has the ultimate power. It's like machismo on steroids, especially with gang members or drug traffickers or people involved in organized crime or somebody who holds a powerful position. Everything they own, it belongs to them. It's almost like a sexual terrorism against women and children in this country. A woman could be walking down the street and the men are catcalling her. She could be grabbed off the side of the road and raped, gang raped by everybody, and then thrown back on the road. Or the man may have a wife and he has 5 girlfriends, but his wife he abuses and the girlfriends he abuses. There's just this strange mentality of machismo in which they own everything and the brute force.
Is there a way for a woman to protect herself in Honduras, or is it impossible? Like, you can't leave the house, or even if you're in your house, you got to be worried about your boyfriend or your husband or a neighbor?
It's difficult because it's ingrained in the culture that the woman believes that this is normal behavior. And that's one of the other reasons why they don't report, because it's normal. The man, he's my husband, I have to. I'll give you an example of a case. This American called me because there was a woman in her church, and the woman had been married to her husband and had 2 children for 4 years. He would not let her leave the house unless he knew where she was going. He made her wear what he decided. He didn't allow her to have contact with family members. He beat her. He psychologically abused her, and he raped her. And he would watch pornography and make her perform what he saw in pornography. She went to her pastor and his wife for help. And the pastor and his wife told her that her job was to endure his violence and pray for him that God would change him. That's the type of attitude there is here.
Wow. Now, what happened to this woman?
The American and we found that we had a 90-minute window to snatch her out. The woman was 3 hours from me. And so she took a taxi to meet the American at a location, who then drove her through the mountains to the Capitol, and I grabbed the woman from her there. And we went through court, and the woman eventually went home. She won her court case. However, the church and the neighbors and his family continued bothering her. She had nowhere to go, and she actually ended up in one of the caravans, and she's currently in the United States seeking asylum.
Now, you have a book out, Journey to Justice, Finding God and Destiny in Darkness. Tell me about your book and what you're writing in it.
There's actually 3 themes in the book. One of them is about God's heart for justice, that it's the second most prominent theme in the Bible, and he wants us all to be a part of justice and making things right. There's a Hebrew word, mishpat, that is how society treats the vulnerable. And a person who is not treating vulnerable people correctly is actually violating justice. They're not just negligent, they're actually violating justice. So this story talks about God's heart for justice, but it talks about how someone like me, who has a history of having been a victim of violence multiple times, how God can use a person like that to make a change in a nation. And it's a story about how this ministry came to be, of 2 people who came not knowing what we're going to do. One door opened, another door opened. We said yes, and we got to work. And now we're an international ministry working for justice programs throughout all of Latin America.
Now, there's a woman in your book who said she didn't know that freedom smelled so good. Tell me about this woman.
Oh my gosh, that was so early in the office. Her sister came to see us saying that her sister's husband was abusing her, and she and her daughter were in hiding, and he was threatening to kill her. He would bust into the family's house and say he would murder everybody in the house if they didn't bring her to him. So the sister took us to her, and she wouldn't come out. She was hiding in this hot little adobe shack with a tin roof and a dirt floor on the side of a mountain, terrified to come out. We talked with her and we prayed with her. She had a daughter there who was 16, and he had actually sexually abused his own daughter also. We finally convinced her that we could help her, and the story's detailed there. I remember that last day in the car after court, and her telling me, "Tell everyone my story. I never knew that freedom smelled so good, and I never knew that freedom had a smell." I think one of the most significant things in this story for me was that this is the property, this is the owning the woman. He carved his name in her back with a machete twice so no other man would have her. And that was just, I think that just stuck in my mind forever. I can't get the picture out of my head of her back.
Now, it kind of leads me to what's going on today at the border in the United States. You know, people across Central America into Mexico perhaps be raped or beaten on the way to then sit at the border, have their children ripped from their arms, sit in a jail. Somebody only does that because it's so horrible where they are. What can we do as Americans to educate other Americans who may be more naive about why people are coming? And 2, what can Honduras do to make that society a better society so they don't have to flee?
The first question I would say is the media needs to talk with people who know what it's really like here. Every day that I leave, I pray that I come home alive. My husband prays that I come home alive. It's a violent place, and I believe the biggest challenge we have is getting the judge to understand what it's like here. People in the United States, when they look at Honduras and they think about a country, they're thinking from their own perspective. and they don't realize the truth of what's going on. I'm going to be starting a podcast soon to talk about what's going on in Honduras. But the media in itself needs to talk with people who are here who can tell Americans what it's really like. This is a difficult situation, and a lot of people are on one side or the other side, the extremes. The answer is actually in the middle. Okay, it's not letting everybody in, it's not letting nobody in. It's fixing the problem. So, for example, asylum cases, they have to land on U.S. soil in order to ask for asylum. If the U.S. government could work with people like us, who worked with someone like Gracie, who was the story I told you about, or another case, Erica, that I had, Erica had a store in her house and MS-13 demanded renta. She couldn't pay. They shot her son dead on December 20th, 2017. They came back on New Year's Eve and shot her mother dead, and then she came to us and was in refuge. And we couldn't get any help for her to get asylum. They were hunting her. And she ended up in a caravan and is in the United States. And every day she would text me, help me, we have no food, I'm scared, I'm frightened, all of these things. So if the U.S. government could work with missionaries and NGOs and other people who are on the ground doing this work so that we can say, yes, this is an asylum case. Here's the police report for this murder. Here's the police report for this murder. Here's the threat. And then we could help them get there, and they wouldn't have to go in a caravan. There are other things they could do with work visas for people who are poor, because you can't get a work visa unless you have a great talent to do something that American couldn't do. There should be some way that we could do, like, my idea would be like a 3-month work visa every year that could be renewed if they went home and didn't commit a crime. There are ways to fix this, but it's so difficult. I think the beginning thing is having the conversations, having those difficult conversations where we can sit down and not attack each other because someone might believe differently than us. And the government needs to sit down, the U.S. government, and do something about this crisis.
What do you say to an American? They say, okay, well, we just heard you say about all this whole machismo culture and all the men. Why do we want, I understand the women are escaping violence, and now you're saying, okay, give work visas to the men. We don't want these machismo men coming over and thinking that women in America are their property.
You're right about that.
Right.
And so, that's part of the process of vetting the people, to make sure that we're not having somebody who has a history of violence come in. The idea is to fix the problem here. There are a lot of NGOs who are trying to fix the problem here. Like, our funding is all donations from individuals and churches. We receive not one red cent from any government.
How many women do you see go through the process that your organization helps?
Full services, I would say probably 200 or 300 a year, not counting the children. When we had the office inside the police, we were handling over 600 cases a year. That included the woman and the children, not counting individuals, just per case. We're not fully up to that operations that we were at before, because we're rebuilding that part of the work. So imagine that, 6,000 cases between February of 2006 and November of 2011. 6,000 cases, and they could have 1 to 10 people involved in every case. Just recently, we had a case of three 12 and 13-year-old girls that we rescued out of sex trafficking at the moment they were being sold, I believe, of all things, to an American.
Wow. How frustrating must be for you that you're there, you gave your life calling to this, and in 14 years you've helped individual people, but you see society, if anything, getting worse, not better.
That's a key point. I thought about that the other day. We've been here and it's gotten worse, not better. In the 14 years, today it's worse than the day that we arrived. Significantly worse, like hundreds of times worse than it was when we arrived. But I do have hope, because there are people within the authorities that work alongside of us, and we're fighting and we're struggling. There's the office agenda in the police. She's amazing and she works with us. But the problem is the drugs and the gangs and the corruption. That's the problem. If that could be fixed and society could have funds into programs that actually are effective, then everything would change.
If you had a magic wand and you were given a blank check to spend as much money as you need to fix this problem, how much money would you need, and where would you put it, and to fix what problems?
I would make sure there are funded multiple refuges around the country for women in crisis in the moment of crisis. Right now, there's only a handful that are severely underfunded.
And
the second thing, wave my magic wand that the corruption within the authorities would be eliminated. And the other thing is intensive trainings of special units that have the power to attend victims of special crimes. Right now, it's not seen as a priority. The members in investigation and even in the prosecutor's office, there are a lot of people who do care, but there are a lot of people who don't care and are corrupt, and a lot who don't know what to do.
Right.
But if we could have these effective special victims units teams, they exist, but they're underfunded, undertrained, undersupplied, and are running into the corruption issue.
Yeah. Well, Gracie, I got one last question for you, and tell me what the American dream means to you.
I love America. I love Honduras. I love the people in both places. For me, the American dream is living a life, doing something that you absolutely love, living a level of income in which you have everything you need. But more than anything else is that what you're doing is impacting this world to make it better. That's, for me, is the American dream.
Thank you very much, Gracie Murphree, author of Journey to Justice, Finding God and Destiny in Darkness, also founder of Heart of Christ Missionary in Honduras. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you very much for your time. I hope things get better there.
And I want to thank you for giving this space for these difficult discussions, for caring about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Gracie. Thanks for watching. For more Brad Show Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.